So welcome back to the 10-10 movement. We're here on question number 8 on the 10-10 life test. And as always, if you haven't done that already, get over to www.10-10.life and take the test. You'll see question 8 is all about your personal and spiritual development. So let me just ask you that question. On a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being your personal and spiritual development is like you're full on, every day you're working on yourself, and 0 is, I don't even know what that is. What score would you give yourself right now? Now, look, as I always say, if you're a 10, you can pretty much turn me off, although maybe don't, maybe I've had people where they've scored a 10 and then suddenly after they've heard me talk, they go, oh, maybe it wasn't a 10 after all. But look, if you're an 8 or a 9, then we're looking good, we're moving in the right direction. Could you turn the dial up? But if we're a 7 or a less, remember what I always say, there's this gap. And it's what's in the gap. If we can discover what's in that gap, and obviously the bigger the gap, more there is to discover. So personal and spiritual development, what is that all about? What does it even mean? Okay, and how do I get on the train? How do I get on that train? If that is in itself going to move me towards a 10 out of 10 life experience, yeah? So personal to spiritual development for me was something I'd never even heard of until I was 47 years old. Now, it all started for me by somebody choosing me. It was very bizarre, okay, and I didn't actually know this till several years later. This lady sort of chose me. She saw something in me, which I see in everybody, I have to say. But each year, as part of her contribution, she moved towards somebody who she thought was underutilizing their gift, okay? All humans, whether they believe it or not, have got a gift. And she saw me underusing my gift, or living less than my potential, which is really, again, what the 10-10 movement's all about. It's moving you to live your fullest possible potential in this lifetime. So anyway, she decided, at the time I had my own business, it was a retail shop. And she used to come in on the Saturday, she was a regular customer, and she used to say to me, you need to buy this book. Now, you know what it's like when somebody says to you, you need to buy a book. And now, I'm a very dyslexic person, I don't really even read. I have read books in my life, of course I have. And since learning some personal and spiritual development, I have done, a fair few books, some learning and stuff like that. So, it depends what your library looks like, Anyway, she said to me, you should read this book. She gave me the title on a piece of paper. So like, a lot of people that would do that, I put it in my pocket and then just carried on. But this woman was persistent. It's a great word for anyone that's in personal or spiritual development, on that train, as I sometimes call it. Persistence, this consistent commitment to grow yourself, to learn more about yourself, how you operate and life around us. How does it all work way beyond what we maybe believed it did before we sort of started that sort of, I always call it the second part of my life. I always say, look, there was the bit where I didn't know anything about this, and then there's the bit since that where I've learned loads and loads of stuff and massively moved towards having a different experience out of life. Anyway, she was so persistent. Every weekend she'd come into my shop and go, did you get the book yet? And of course, I would always go, no, I haven't. Anyway, she gave up in the end, and one day she's come in and she's got a little bag, and in the bag is the book. She said, look, I've got you the book. I'm going, oh, that's really nice of you, thank you so much, and reached into my pocket to give her some money. She'd go, no, look, it's on me, just make sure you read it. So I took it home, put it on my desk at home, and of course that's where it remained. That, just as some people should know, is what we call shelf development. It's a book on a bookshelf that's not been read or utilised, no action's been taken. So anyway, she was still very persistent, and she came in every weekend and said, have you read the book? And I'm going, God, is this woman ever going to give up? And I said, no, not read the book, not read the book, not read the book. This went on for months. Anyway, eventually, one day, I worked very hard, even in my old world, as I sometimes call it. And one day, I had a rare day off, and I picked up the book. Now, this picking up of the book was a very life-changing moment, because I took the book, I actually read the book in my bath, yeah? So I went into the bath and I started to read. It's quite a thick book. And I know you're thinking to yourself, what is this book? I'll tell you at the end, yeah? Anyway, I started to read it. And it was one of those things where, even though I'm not an avid reader, I had to keep turning the hot tap on because the water kept going cold, and I was engrossed in this book, yeah? Now, it was a thick book. I never read all this book, okay? So sometimes you don't have to read all the book. You have to just read the bit that's ready for you to read right now. Yeah. Now maybe you have to read all the book to find that, but look, it's not really about that. I had what I call, some people call it an aha moment, a light bulb moment, a breakthrough. We call it an OFM. It stands for O. Me. And actually, I kept reading. As I say, I read about a quarter of it, and I can't really remember what was in that book except one thing, which literally changed my world and had me moving massively towards a 10 out of 10 life. And that was the realization that I had a set of beliefs which I'd taken on board from other people, which actually didn't really serve me. They got me, if you remember my score, they got me to a 5 out of 10. Like I always call it, half happy. So everything I'd sort of been taught or learnt or observed, whatever that was in my life, to that moment, had got me half happy. Now that is what I call a big gap. So I went off to find out what was in this gap. And the very first thing I realised was that the beliefs that I held that weren't even mine, I'd sort of adopted them from someone else, weren't serving me. So I set off on a quest to find out what was in my gap and also to discover and create some new beliefs. Now, there are two types of beliefs. There's the ones that you take on from somebody else or something. You might read the paper, you read something, and suddenly it becomes a belief. Not that I'm a pub goer, but go down the pub and you'll hear people talking about what they've read in the paper as though it's fact. And what is pretty a fact, I've done this myself, if you cut out of a newspaper all the ads and all the things that, are sort of assumptions or non-truths, you ain't left with a lot left. It's not a newspaper, it's a couple of clippings, yeah? So getting your news from the newspaper or the news media generally means that it's been massively filtered. Now, the history of the news media, which is why you don't want to get your beliefs from there, is that in the 1800s there were two people, one called Hearst, one called Pulitzer. These people got into a newspaper war in New York and across America. And basically the modern news media was built from these two people having a competitive fight about who was going to, rule the media world. And in that time, they created the modern media, which doesn't exactly tell the facts. They don't necessarily tell the truth. They tend to occupy what I call the red world rather than the green world, because their number one outcome is to sell their papers. If you've never read the history of these two people, it's phenomenal to read, and then compare that with modern media, where you definitely don't want to be getting your beliefs from, because they are going to reduce your level of happiness like you cannot believe. So if you can't get it from the papers, you obviously, or the news media generally, where else do you get your beliefs? Well, your family. Yeah, look, as I look back at my family life, we had a limited money and wealth in our family. We had a limited experience. We're not academically smart as we never went to university. I never even did my A-levels. Yeah, I only did my O-levels. So look, but all of that information that you learn from academia, look, and I'm not making this wrong, I'm just saying it fills your head with stuff which has got a limited lifespan. I always ask this question, has science discovered more already than is left to be discovered? Well, and the answer to that is I can tell you that they have, in what they've discovered is a pinprick of what is discoverable. So again, if we rely on science for all of our belief system, then we are massively limiting our ability to live at a 10 out of 10 experience. Now, as I say, I'm not making that wrong. I'm just going, look, how would it be? Our potential's greater than the sum of our beliefs. So we have to check where we got our beliefs from. So Obviously family, school, of course, everything you learn at school, that gave you a set of beliefs. One of my favourite things to just chuck out there, you know, as a bit of a grenade, as some people call me, when I throw something out there, is that, of course, you know, most people have a belief that the human race evolved from, you know, apes. You know, the monkey thing. You've seen that picture with the 7 monkeys where we slowly, you know, stood up and became human. Now, Charles Darwin, that was the sort of theory of him. His dad, of course, they were also like studied all that sort of stuff. But actually, in Charles Darwin's book written in the 1850s, even he questioned his own theory. It is only a theory. It still, to this day, remains a theory. And in the late 1990s, somebody sort of discovered that actually Charles Darwin's thinking that this theory that we came from monkeys wasn't true is actually true. How would it be we didn't? But you see, most people hold that belief. And what does it mean if we didn't come from monkeys? Where did we come from? So it sort of opens up a whole can of worms. So anyway, there's a bit about beliefs and how you might, this is how I started to challenge my own beliefs. Now, the best beliefs to have are the ones where you have actually experienced something. So this means stepping outside your comfort zone, stepping in and trying to looking to learn things, not really trying, but you're looking to learn new things that you personally experience. Because when you personally experience something and that becomes a belief, that is a rock solid belief. Now, when that starts to happen, so I started to swap all my old learned beliefs, my limiting beliefs they're sometimes called, swapping them for experiential beliefs. Now when I did that, boom, my life score started to go up the scale. I started to feel better, I started to be more empowered, I started to be able to utilise different parts of me that I didn't even know existed. And that is, if you haven't been on YouTube and seen it, it's like changing perspectives is one of my things, yeah? How do we look at things differently? So I created a series of videos that basically talk about, you know, perspectives, and if you change your perspective, how suddenly you can feel more empowered, inspired and stuff like that. So really, that's it for personal and spiritual development. I always say, you know, look at changing your beliefs. Obviously we're going to give you lots of stuff that you can learn from, and obviously go outside, but remember, it's experiential. Just reading a book is just more intellectual stuff. So you have to take action. Action is the key thing. So move towards having an experience, and then when you've had the experience, then share your experience. Don't just share what you've read in a book, because that's not worth anything to anyone. There you go, that's it for video number 8. So thank you for watching this video, and if you got lots of value out of it, then please just press the subscribe button right now and the little notification bell, and that way whenever we upload another video, which is every Tuesday and every Friday, you'll get a little notification reminding you to come over and watch the next installment of the 1010 video library, so to speak, which is growing here on YouTube.